Wallabies squad for the end of year tour, folks, has been announced. There are some interesting inclusions, a few big omissions, and there's an Aussie A squad which is also touring. There's a bunch of guys injured. There's a bunch of guys on club duties as well. We will go through the ins and outs, the fixtures list, expectations, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. The big news in terms of the inclusions, I feel like the biggest one is Carter Gordon. He is back not only in rugby union, but back with the Wallabies. Remember when the Melbourne Rebels went bust, he was in search of a new job. He was linked with a bunch of different places, but ended up signing with the Titans in the NRL. He's had a pretty injury-plagued time though, and he has decided to make his way back to rugby union. So he's not only back to union, he signed with the Reds for the upcoming Super Rugby season, I think 3-year deal, but also parachuted straight into the Wallabies team, which, if you're Ben Donaldson, has got a burn. Or I guess the writing on the wall has been there a little bit for Dono, because he wasn't even in the squad when they announced it to take on the ABs in the final 2 games of the Rugby Championship. So he's already been slightly on the outer, but with James O'Connor off in his club over in the UK, with Tom Liner being rested, with Noah Lolosio still being out injured, you would have thought maybe Dono's the next cab off the rank, but no, they've got Corden back from the NRL and he's straight into the Wallabies. So that highlights kind of for Ben Donaldson where your position is in the pecking order. He is in the Aussie A side, which is also travelling to Japan, but he's not. There's numerous guys who are linked with both squads. Donaldson is not one of those. So Carter Gordon ahead of Donaldson. That is an interesting selection from Joe Schmidt. The other guys who are kind of the big ins, Aidan Ross, remember former All Black, he has been named in the squad. He could potentially be another one of these guys to represent both countries if he gets a game. And Kalani Thomas, the halfback, real kind of live wire there. I think potentially that kind of perfect bench 9, fulfilling the role which Tate McDermott sometimes used to have as the kind of high-energy sniping 9 to take on some tired bodies. He is there as well. So those are your main guys who are in. Remember, there's a few guys who didn't get any game time in the Rugby Championship but were in the squads at various points, like Josh Canham. He is in the squad, and Matty Faessler also in the squad. Neither of those guys featured during the Rugby Championship. And there's a couple of bits of good news, especially in the backs. Dylan Peach, remember, he started the Rugby Championship but got that jaw injury. He is back and available, and likewise Andrew Callaway, who missed the end of the Rugby Championship, is back, because the Aussie backline has kind of been pretty devastated by injuries at times. So having those guys back is good news. That's not to say the injury list is not still pretty long. Charlie Cale still unavailable. Longy Gleeson in the Lucy's is still unavailable. Lucy's, I feel like there's a bit more depth, so it's not as big a deal, but it would be nice to have him available. The key ones, I feel like, are Tate McDermott, who, with the retirement of Nick White, is right up there in the pecking order of your starting 9s. Noah Lolosio, who for pretty much the majority of Joe's time in charge of the Wallabies has been the first choice 10 when available, but obviously he's missed the Lions tour and he's missed the Rugby Championship, so him being out is not really news, but he is confirmed as unavailable. And then Tom Wright, who again has been the first choice guy for Joe during his time in charge of the Wallabies and has been electric at fullback, he is still unavailable. So you without some pretty important players due to injury. They've rested Tom Liner, which is also a pretty interesting call, kind of highlighting the fact that he's still a young guy, 22 years old, and he's had a couple of big whacks in recent times. I think it was a hamstring injury and a concussion. So giving him a chance to fully get back fit and not pushing him on this end of the year tour is responsible selections from the coaching staff to not rush him. Although it does mean, as I said, you've got to find somebody else, and that somebody else is Carter Gordon. There have been a few retirements. Remember, James Slipper's retired, Nick White's retired, Dave Parecki's retired, so there's a bunch of guys unavailable for that reason. And then, I guess, just in terms of the straight drops, I mean, you could say Liner, but as I said, it's being rested. And then Brendan Paenga-Amosa, his stocks seem to have fallen as well, because he's not even in the Aussie A side for this one. A few of the guys who are linked with both, Pete Samu is in the Wallabies squad, but also the Aussie A side. Remember, he's not had any game time under Joe just yet, so they probably want to get him up to speed a little bit before chucking him in the deep end. Other guys, Josh Canham is also in the A side. Matty Faessler probably needs a bit of game time in Wallabies Gold, or at least Wallabies A gold as well in the A side, and then Hamish Stewart, who likewise hasn't had any game time in the Rugby Championship in the Aussie A side as well. It is really surprising that Ben Donaldson is not in both. But they're just taking the 210s. Carter Gordon fresh from Rugby League, and Tane Edmed, who is himself kind of rather down Joe's pecking order. They have got the 5 matches. They don't have some of the guys available for the ones outside the test window. So Japan, that's in October. That's certainly outside the test window. And if I'm not mistaken, the France game being late in November is also outside the test window. So some of the big name guys who are not in the initial squad will likely, I would imagine, join up for the core games in the middle. That's your likes of your Skelton, Hooper, O'Connor, Ikitau. Big omissions to have, but they've all got clubs over in the Northern Hemisphere now, so not able to get released for those outside of test window matches. But Japan, to start off with, you feel like that's one that the Wallabies will be pretty big favourites in the clash up against Eddie Jones. It's going to have a bit of spice about it. England will certainly be tough at Twickenham. Italy will be one where you've realistically got to get a win. Remember, Australia are still chasing down 6th spot in the world rankings, which could be crucial for being a top seed, but it's not going to be easy. But with these fixtures, there are points on offer. Ireland and Dublin, and then France. So, yeah, Australia need to win a fair whack of these games and hope realistically that the likes of Argentina drop some world rankings points. You feel like the Japan and Italy games are probably must-wins, and you'd like to win at least one of the other 3. But as I said, it's not going to be easy, any of those games at all. You guys let us know your thoughts on how the Aussie side is looking. Apart from Ben Donaldson, do you feel like there's anybody else who can feel ultimately snubbed? Who else would you have liked to see in the squad? As I said, there is the Aussie A side, which has got a bunch of talented players. There's some former Wallabies in that lot as well. Some of them, if there are injuries and whatnot, could potentially link up with the Wallabies side proper. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts on the Wallabies squad. If you want Wallabies gear, check the link down in the description. There's a Wallabies official store who is an affiliate of this channel. If you purchase using that link, it tells them 2 cents sent you. So yeah, take care of yourselves, folks, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.